Hi. Well, the video's gone all a bit grainy again today, but hopefully that won't distract you from paying attention, since that's what I'm here to discuss, is attention. And we easily get distracted. You might get distracted watching this and seeing my crazy hair doing whatever it wants. I have no control over my hair, it just has a life of its own. Or you might be distracted by other things instead of paying attention to what I'm going to try and read to you. And well, we'll just see how it goes, hey? So I wanted to talk about attention and what Gurdjieff says about attention, because it's the attention we're trying to work on ourselves, so that we can use it to develop ourselves. We need attention. We're easily distracted. We easily fall into imagination. Put all this in other shows. So how do we get the attention? Well, first we need to look at what attention is. So I'm going to start off with a Q&A from views from the real world. Someone asks, how can we gain attention? And Gurdjieff says, there is no attention in people. You must aim to acquire this. Self-observation is only possible after acquiring attention. Start on small things. Make the breaking of a small habit your aim. You know, like the habits of um, when you start going into imaginary world, try and stop yourself. That's becoming attentive of what your mind is doing, or perhaps become attentive of how your body's being, like try and perhaps relax when you're sitting down watching TV, reading a book or whatever. Perhaps before you start that, perhaps go through your body from your feet up and try and relax every part of your body, so you're putting the attention into your body to uh, sense every muscle, every part of your body and what it's doing, whether it's stiff and, you know, feeling a bit strenuous, we want to try and relax it, because once we start relaxing our body and get to know our body, paying that attention on our body, helps with our development. It helps with the physical center, the moving center. So he says in Life is Real, only then when I am, for the given case, it is indispensable first to learn to divide one's entire attention in three approximately equal parts, and to concentrate each separate part simultaneously for a definite time on three diverse inner or outer objects. And then three centers are our physical, emotional, and our thinking center. And it's quite a difficult exercise sometimes to be doing, of trying to get all three centers to become attentive and then to be able to use all three centers. I know there's various different exercises talked about through the books or online about this, especially in the Gurdjieff work of, you know, with the physical. When you're starting, maybe start with counting 1, 2, 3, and try and concentrate on that. Keep your attention on that. And after a while, just suddenly become aware of what your emotions are doing, but you've got to keep counting. So then you become aware of what your emotions are doing. So it's the second attention. And then your third attention after a while, once you've got used to doing that, so you've got your counting still going, 27, 28, 29, and you're aware of what you're feeling, then you start thinking about something like, for example, gratitude, maybe, because that's a beneficial thing to be thinking about. What are you grateful for in your life? And then that should hopefully bring another attention in. So you've got your three different centers working, hopefully harmoniously, and that all takes practice. But we all get easily distracted by things, or we start thinking, have I missed a number? Or you start thinking, what was I feeling? Or you start feeling about what you're thinking about. And it all becomes a bit of a distraction and an amalgamation of all three centers. So you need to try and put attention on each three so that they start working on their own, but at the same time together. So carrying on with Life is Real. Although in a normal man, this attention in the passive state is also a something of proportionally blended results of the corresponding actions of all three independent automatized parts in his whole individuality, and is always one whole, yet in an active state, such a man can consciously concentrate this whole attention of his on anything, either on some part of his common presence or on something outside him. in such a, so to say, collectedness, that all the associations automatically proceeding in him, which being law conformable results of the general functioning of his organism, must always, as long as he breathes, inevitably proceed or totally cease to hinder him. So it's once you've been bringing them three centers together in a concentrated but attention or free alertness, then that wholeness comes together, and it is a different feeling. It's a different well, hopefully it's the genuine you coming through, the genuine I working on itself, because you're becoming more attuned to everything that's going on. I was going to say something else about that. Oh yes, I like his word collectedness. So you're collecting yourself together. Your three centers are all collected, but at the same time being very clear and concise individual centers on their own, doing their attention. So this is still from Life is Real. When a man really sleeps normally, his attention, by the quality of which the gradation of the difference between the waking state and sleep is conditioned, also sleeps, that is to say, his attention is, according to the law conformable tendencies in him, stored up with corresponding force for the subsequent necessary intensive manifestations. And they are intensive once you start working on them and really staying with them. A normal man can intentionally divide his whole attention into two or even three separate parts and concentrate each of these on various independent objects inside or outside himself. I haven't tried the ones where you concentrate on an object with your three different attentions. I must admit, I have obviously done meditations on, looked at candles or looked at certain objects to try and get something from that, a visualization but of some kind, or to try and be aware of it. But sometimes that can become more of a, is it a reality? I use that exercise quite often to see if I can see what they call beyond the veil, when I'm staring at something so intently to the point of you're not sure if it's really real. It's like if you say your name to yourself so many times over and over and over again, after a while it begins to feel like that doesn't mean anything, it's nothing. And it's the same when you do these visualization exercises on objects. So carrying on with Life is Real. For the definition of this property of man, which is called attention, there is, by the way, found also in ancient science the following verbal formulation: the degree of blending of that which is the same in the impulses of observation and constatation in one totality's processes with that occurring in other totalities. So it's once you've got them attentions together and we start blending them, but not mixing them up, like I was saying before about thinking when you're feeling when you're thinking. You know, we've got to try and make sure we're thinking when we're thinking, and that when we're feeling, we're using our emotions and feeling with them and not thinking with our emotions, even though all three centers have the same centers again in them. Each center has another three centers inside it: an emotional, intelligence, thinking, and physical. So each center is made up of another three centers. So you can have intellectual emotion, you can have emotional intelligence. But when you're first starting out on this, you don't want to analyze that too much. You want to come to that later on when you've started practicing exercises to see how you can work on your attention and become aware of your centers. It will all start falling into place quite easily when you work on yourself. So from views from the real world. To achieve this aim, you must try and try. When you try, the result will not be in the true sense of self-observation. But trying will strengthen your attention. You will learn to concentrate better, which is what I was just saying. You've got to, you know, it takes practice, but after a while, things will start to fall into place. As I've said before, fake it till you make it. Though I know a lot of people don't like that because they think that, you know, you could be faking it and faking it and faking it and never know if you're going to make it. But from my own experiences, I suppose, you know, I used to practice and, you know, easily get distracted, but at least I'm trying and sooner you keep on, don't give up kind of thing, it will start happening more naturally for you, or more instantaneously, in a way that, you know, It won't take you by surprise at first, because suddenly you'll be doing it, and then it'll take you by surprise. You'll be like, oh, I'm doing it. And then you lose it because you've been distracted from what you're doing. But that's fine. It's okay. You then know that you can do it. You know, that practice makes perfect. Or as my friend who used to be a guitarist used to say, practice makes a shit hot guitarist. So Gurdjieff also goes on to say, at present you have but one attention. That's because I swore. I'm losing potty mouth, sorry. At present you have but one attention, either in the body or the feeling. So them exercises I was saying about earlier will then help you to move your attention, so you become aware of the other attentions. You can have more than one attention, but we do normally just use one attention in our everyday mechanical life. So from views from the real world, attention is gained only through conscious labour and intentional suffering, through doing small things voluntarily. Make some small aim your God. So back to the aims, said about these before, make your little aims, go, because we're going up the ladder, we don't want to be going down. Little rungs, not big rungs with big gaps that we have to climb up and stretch to get. We want little rungs so we can make our way up the ladder. Memory, attention, observation is nothing more than observation of one centre by another, or one centre listening to another, which is fine. You know, that helps us observe what we're doing and how we're being. Ordinarily, man has only one attention directed on what he is doing. His mind does not see his feelings, and vice versa. And there's something I wanted to say about. Many people say, oh, we should all be able to do multitasking. Well, I kind of disagree with all that, because I think then your attention is spread out. You're not concentrating on one particular thing at a time, one task at a time. And I think that's how mistakes happen. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people can multitask. I myself like to concentrate one task at a time and not be doing lots of things all at once. I know Gurdjieff does do exercises where you're doing different things at the same time, but I think that comes along perhaps when you've started practicing the concentrating on one task at a time, you know. Just my opinion. So still from views from the real world. It is important to learn to distinguish this attention, the automatic, from mechanical attention. Or automatic is the same as mechanical attention. As long as the two attentions are not separated from one another, they remain so alike that an ignorant person is unable to distinguish between them. And this is what we're working on. We're trying to be able to distinguish between what attention's doing what. Full, deep, highly concentrated attention makes it possible to separate one from the other by taste, in order to discriminate between our incoming thoughts, information on one side, and differentiation on the other. The store of attention in the mind, like the electric charge of a battery, is very small, and other parts of the body have no wish to remember. You know, sometimes our heart feels one thing and our mind's saying something else, you know, or the other way around. Or we want to do one thing and our body's not letting us do it. I'm sure we've had moments like that. Sometimes that's quite weird, isn't it, when our body doesn't want to do what our mind wants us to do. So this is coming from, still from views from the real world. Our mind is not us, it is merely a small part of us. It is true that this part has a connection with us, but only a small connection, and so very little material is allotted to it by our organisation. If our body and feelings receive for their existence the necessary energy, and various elements in the proportion of, say, 20 parts, our mind receives only one part. Our attention is the product evolved from these elements, this material. Our separate parts have different attention. Its duration and its power are proportionate to the material received. The part which receives more material has more attention. Since our mind is fed by less material, its attention, that is, its memory, is short and is effective only as long as the material for it lasts. Indeed, if we wish, and continue to wish, to remember ourselves only with our mind, we shall be unable to remember ourselves longer than our material allows. No matter how much we may dream about it, no matter how much we may wish it, or what measures we make or take. When this material is spent, our attention vanishes. And that's why Gurdjieff stresses so much, you need to wish with your whole being. You need to do it with your whole being. The I can, I am, I can, I wish, I am, I can, I will. That's got to be all of your senses doing that, wanting that, not just a part of it, not just your mind, or not just part of your emotions, or not just part of your physical body. It's got to be all free. But at the time when you're training in this, sometimes it is just one. And if you can become aware of that, you need to start bringing in the other one. Like if you're just thinking it, you've got to start feeling it, or if it's the other way around, feeling it, you need to start thinking it. But you can do this. You can work on this yourself. You become aware of it. So this is from Ouspensky. Attention, that is the direction of the thinking center's activity. By observing attention and trying to control it, we compel ourselves to work in the intellectual parts of centers. And he says the intellectual parts of centers. As I was saying before, each center has all three centers in it. There's the emotion has intellectual emotional center, an emotional center, and a moving emotional center. Physical has an intellectual physical center, or moving center, I should say, emotional moving center, and a moving center, physical moving center, and the same with the intellectual. So if we can tell all our intellectual sides of our centers, or think it, then that will hopefully move into the emotional side of all of the centers, so that they start working with it, and then hopefully all the physical sides, the moving sides of all the centers will start working. So that's 9 centers, even though it's 3 centers, it's 9 centers because each center's got 3 in it. Magic, the law of 3. Should do something on the laws of 3 and 7. I think I've done some with Josh, or maybe Tony on the channel. Do look through and find them if you want to. So we've got from C.S. Knott. He's talking about Gurdjieff. He also spoke about being able, later on, to divide our attention into 2 or even 3 parts. But when someone asked how this could be done, he said, "You cannot do this yet. Later we will speak about it. People in general have no real attention. What they think is attention is only self-tensing. First, you must strive to acquire attention. Correct self-observation is possible only after you have acquired a measure of attention. Begin with small things." And then Knott goes on. The reading of the book is an exercise in sustained attention. He's talking about Beelzebub's Towers here, all and everything. I'm sure many of you have read it, or I hope you have. And it does take attention to read it. That's why Gurdjieff says read it at least 3 times. First time just like a book, or as if he was reading a newspaper. Second time as if he was reading it to somebody else. And the third time to really fathom the gist. Because it takes attention to read it. It's but once you start working on it and start reading it in them kind of ways, and you keep coming back to it, you start getting more and more every time. I can't deny every time I read another chapter, I'm like, I missed that bit before, or I get something new from it each time. It's a compendium of wonderful things, a bit like Pandora's box, but it's been opened and you just can't put it down, and you need to keep learning more and more and more from it. So what did I get to? Right, the reading of the book is an exercise in sustained attention together with imaginative understanding. To understand, an effort must be made with all 3 centers. Fragmentary effort fails to make a whole. How long can I hold my attention? It varies, and one has to take advantage of those periods when one finds one's attention being held by the narrative. And sometimes when you read Beelzebub's Towers, you just think, what is this about? And then other times you're just pulled in. And sometimes them bits where you're thinking, what is this about? When you read it again, you're pulled in because you're suddenly getting it. For me, it was a lesson learning from Gurdjieff about reading things over and over again. I used to be one of those that once a book was read, that was it, put it away, never look at it again. But he's taught me that I need to reread stuff. And, I have been doing that through the lockdowns. Can't say It's been weird, like rereading a lot of books again made me see them in a totally new way. It's why I ended up putting the Maurice Nicole book on time back up, because I reread that and realized that the first time I read it, I didn't take in most of what it was saying, but reading it again, it's like how minds read it casually the first time, and then the second time it went like, okay, there's something here. And then when you come back to it a third time, it's like, wow, now I really get it. Okay, I had to give it a few months between each reading. I can't read something 3 times in a day. And I would say the same about the Steiner work, even though I kept going on and on with it, kept persevering. I never understood it. It's just, but I just knew there was something there. And then I think it was in 2016, suddenly it all bing started making sense to me. It's whether you have the perseverance, and that's down to you. You know, if you can keep pushing yourself. Sometimes you find answers through other things or other people, or someone else says something, or another book says something that suddenly makes sense of something you might have read in the Gurdjieff work or in the Steiner work or whatever you're into. You know, sometimes I read some of the Tibetan esoteric writings, and that suddenly makes sense of something that I'd read in the Gurdjieff work that maybe hadn't made sense to me before. You know, sometimes the way someone else says something makes the sense of it, but your attention is trying to grasp and grab it. It does want to know. And I'm going to finish with another not quite quote. Each time we make an effort to bring our attention back to ourselves, to what we are doing, to remember ourselves, the centers become connected. Marvelous. So good luck with all your attention, and work on your centers. And it's difficult. Oh, look, there's my phone being rude. Didn't turn it off again. I'm going to pay attention to my phone now. Till next time, thanks, and keep the attention going. Bye.